הבאים to Matal. My name is Racheli. We'll speak about me. I happen to be lucky enough to work here in the Bet Midrash upstairs. Rabbanit opened Matan a couple of decades ago, and we have an amazing women's Bet Midrash upstairs. So I feel at home here. I hope you feel comfortable, including the guys on the steps. Kaha. I'm not very good with speeches, so the way we'll conduct it is I'll probably have some opening statements, and then we'll see a video clip that I'll talk about it in a second, and then we'll try to have some kind of open conversation. And that means if there's anything you feel you want to say or ask or hear about, so feel free to bring it up. I'm okay with, nothing's too personal just because I know how to handle it, and I don't go places I don't feel comfortable with. So you feel free to bring up whatever you want. For us, it's been now 2.5 years since that summer. And sometimes it feels like it has just been 2 or 3 minutes ago, and sometimes it feels like 1,000 years. So when I try to imagine you, I'm sure for some this is an experience that you remember very vividly and you were part of, and you really, we were in this together. And for some, I'm not sure, it's okay if some of the details are not clear to you and you don't remember the story exactly, we'll talk about it. One of the reasons, and that is one of the reasons I bring the video clip to revive some of our memories and what went on during that summer. 2 or 3 comments about the clip. We'll start with the clip and then we'll talk. One is a general comment, and that is I was immensely lucky, and that is because my parents made Aliyah many years before I was born. And that means I was raised in Israel, and I was lucky enough to raise my children in Israel. And that means you get the English that I have. The vocabulary could be wished for, and the accent is half Israeli, half Brooklyn, and this is it. So that's the first apology. The other is that the first clip I'll show you is something that was made for the shloshim of the boys, the 30 days after they were found, which is actually 48 days after they were murdered. And I didn't prepare it, obviously. So there's a lot of talk there about the families, which makes me feel uncomfortable, but I want to share my experience, and that is that every time, since I remember myself, but mostly in the last, then and that summer and this last year that wasn't simple in Israel, the past year, every time the spotlight hovers for a bit over someone, be it a family or a victim or people that you get to know people and you're in awe with the kind of people we have around here. And you say, wow, look at that family and look at this person, look at what we lost and look at how they're dealing. And altogether, I'm under the impression that there are a bunch of amazing people in this people, and that there are the fabric of this and so when you hear the talk about families, just take it in the very general sense, okay? And I think that's about it. So we'll hear the clip, then I'll talk a little bit, and then it will be up to you. So, if this 30 seconds of awkward, quiet silence where I ask myself, so nobody's going to ask anything, you can save me that experience. So we'll start now. For us, it all starts on a Thursday evening. Our second son, Naftali, is an 11th grade student in Yeshivat Makor Chaim, wonderful yeshiva in Kfar Etzion, that's about 15 minutes away from here, and south towards Gush Etzion. And it was the last day of school in high schools in Israel, and he had, for the last 2 days, he had a field trip with his friends, and he spoke to us in the afternoon. He said, usually came home every Friday morning. It's a boarding school. And he said he might come home tonight because he's tired, whatever. And that's what happens when you cut Mishmar. Anyhow, joke. By, I think, 9 o'clock, he sent us a text saying that he's on his way home. It took us about 1 hour to see his text, and we wrote back, great, we're expecting you. And it took about 18 days until we knew the whole timeline, and we figured out that our text reached his phone about 2 minutes after everything was over. But in between, it was an early Thursday night, and we went to sleep, and he's a big boy, he'll come home, he's independent, everything's fine, very responsible. And at 3 o'clock at night, we were woken up by policemen that were sent to our home by Gilad's family. There's a boy called Gilad, we never heard of him before, but he's a classmate of Naftali, and he was in touch with his parents, and at some point his phone went dead, and he didn't arrive at home, and they started making many phone calls, and they found out that Naftali and Gilad left school together. So they came to our home to look for Gilad. And I was sure it's just about walking upstairs and seeing them safely in bed. And we did that, and he wasn't there. And we rang his phone, and the phone was dead. And we knew we were in trouble. I was thinking about traffic accidents. But then within 2 hours, we got, through the police, we got the last location of their phones. And the last location of their phones was somewhere in the Hebron area. And that it didn't take much to understand what kind of movie this is, what we're dealing with. Actually, within 24 hours, the intelligence knew everything almost there is to know. The terrorists involved, the weapons they bought, the cars, the intelligence worked wonders. They just didn't know where they're being held. And during the 18 days of search, there were a lot of findings of things that were prepared to keep people long-term, hostages. And the other hand, we had a recording of a phone call that Gilad managed to ring from his cell phone on the car, whispering, "We were kidnapped." And you can hear Arab voices around, and that were very hard to understand. And they were saying in Hebrew with an Arabic accent, "Put down your heads." And then there were some puffs that were later analyzed as being gunshots with a silencer. Everybody during this time we were in touch. We were for 18 days. Our home was like the Big Brother's house. There were dozens and dozens of cameras and journalists around, and we were in and out. And I traveled to the Human Rights Council in Geneva, and everything was, of course, very anxious and very crazy and very intensive. But everybody was very honest with us. They said all options are open. We know that there were weapons. We know that there were shots. Maybe, on the other hand, we have a lot of intelligence saying that they were looking to keep hostages long term. And maybe they were all alive somewhere. Maybe they were wounded. Maybe they murdered 2 and they kept 1. Maybe they were murdered. All the options are open, and we're working under the work assumption that we're looking for live people. And that means that in the most almost unhuman way, intelligence and soldiers and civilians and whoever could have anything to do with that was doing everything humanly possible to find them, around the clock, day and night. And about a little over a year ago, there was a time where the IDF brought us to the place where they were found. It's in the Palestinian Authority. You can't just get there on your own. And a lot of people needed closure, a lot of people that were involved in the search. And we came there, and I was looking at, that area. That was the area where, after all all the intelligence work, it was narrowed down to, you have to look in this area. And there were millions and millions and millions of caves and rocks. You know the expression, we'll leave no stone unturned? There were millions of rocks and stones and caves and holes and basements. And again, it hit me how, first of all, within the tragedy, what a true grace, divine grace, it was to actually get them back and to bring them to what we call Keter Israel. And what unbelievable Mesirut Nefesh, total devotion it took from thousands and thousands of soldiers and civilians that were searching. You know, it was terribly hot in the day and terribly dangerous at night, and they were going on and on and on. And we were there one day before they were found. We requested to go to the Hebron area to meet the soldiers, and we just came to say thank you. And they said, "What thank you? This is what we joined the army for. You don't have to thank us." And it truly, a lot in this story, a lot of aspects are for me unbelievable. But if I want to put it in a very blunt way, I think it took us a few hours to realize it's not, that people know. It's not our only, our little family trouble. And to realize that the whole state of Israel is involved. And about 24 hours later, we realized that Jews all over the diaspora are involved. And people, people are rallying, people are praying, people are contacting their politicians and whatever. The next thing on our agenda, if they wouldn't have been found that week, was to go meet with the Pope. Thank God they were found on time. But I think, good Italian Jews said, what could we do? Maybe this will help. In a world where so many people are murdered almost on a daily or weekly basis, here there were 3 kids that didn't come home from school. I mentioned Naftali and Gilad. Eyal joined them. He was 2 years older than them, and he joined them in the bus station. They were waiting together. He came from Kiryat Arba. He stopped to say Shabbat Shalom to his grandparents, and he was on his way home. So these 3 kids just didn't come home from school, and millions of people around the world were losing sleep over it. And again, in a world that's so, there's so much bad news, the ability to connect, the ability to care, the ability to feel that it's kin, it's your brothers out there, is almost miraculous to me. It speaks volumes about who we are and definitely about who we could strive to be. And I think that's my long opening statement. So let's take it where, the advantage with someone saying or asking something is that at least it interests one person around here. So go ahead. Yeah. Yes.
What, throughout this entire process, at least when I was watching the video, I'm thinking like, the speeches you're giving and the strengths you must have had while going through everything that happened is something I can, I don't even know, or I can't fathom. Was there something that I guess what I'm asking, how did you kind of get through each step in this process? First, not knowing anything to knowing everything, and was there a specific way that you kind of like helped your way through this and so be able to deal with the situation?
Thanks. And thanks for being first. That's real tzedakah. So, let's see. First of all, you deal with the cards you're dealt. You never expect this. I definitely didn't expect this. And I lived a very nice, protected life. Some people, not you, you've been in Israel for a couple of months already. People from the outside, they feel that here it looks like a war zone, and you must have missiles in the street every moment. I grew up here feeling totally safe. So there was nothing, no feeling of... So you just deal with things as they come, and I guess when Akadosh Baruch Hu, rolls the divine dice, it comes with whatever strength you need. But first of all, I must say we had unbelievable support. First from family and neighbors and community and friends and the country and Jews all around the world. I spoke to Jews from South America, from North America, from Europe, from Australia, from South Africa, from Kathmandu, seriously. People were calling in. There was one story of a person that called, these are two phone calls I took myself, the one from Kathmandu and this is a person that called and he said, you know, I'm considered a non-affiliated Jew. I want to tell you, I feel so connected. And so some people would say there's no such thing as an unaffiliated Jew, but just a word about support. I'm saying this because this has practical value. One is our family, our friends, our neighbors had an amazing way of arranging, first of all, to be totally there for us, but also totally respectful of our space, you know, nobody gave us this idea that, oh, you're going through something so terrible, you don't have any judgment, you know, we'll decide for you. No, it was protecting our space and having the sensitivity. Wanting to help is not enough. Knowing how to help is an art. So that was amazing to me. The fact that from the very beginning they prepared themselves for long term. You know, there were, not only my siblings took off time from work, my neighbors took days off from work, but they did it in a smart way where if this would have lasted for months, so somehow this would work out for months. And beyond that, something that's very important for me to say is Naftali's friends. You know this feeling when you don't know what to say and you don't want to invade anyone's, well, maybe you'll say the wrong thing, maybe they don't want to get my phone call? Call. One of the first things we told after it was over, we told Naftali's friends is don't walk on eggshells around us, don't be, you know, oversensitive. They come for Shabbatot, they call, they're a bit of Naftali in our home for our kids. They're there for our children. You know, in Hebrew we say Shelo neda. You shouldn't experience this, but this happens. And sometimes you're there when, just stay in touch with the parents, stay in touch with the siblings, be there for them. Don't disappear into this, oh, lo naim li, I don't feel so comfortable. Just go ahead, break those walls and be there for them. So that's about support. Beyond that, during the search, I was terribly anxious, but it all, you know, concentrated in a place in a physical feeling, and we were very, very focused on what could we do, what's our share in this. I remember telling myself I can always fall apart later, okay? It doesn't have to be right now. And I think the six of us, the adults in the story, of course, Naftali, Yana, and Gilad's siblings had you know, a whole experience for themselves, but the parents surprisingly found that we have a lot of control over where our thoughts go. You know, you would think that when something so horrible happens, all the black things that could happen, all the terrible things, the dark places, they take over your thought and you can't go. So no, very, very quickly, each of us learned, you know, what's helpful, what's not helpful, what we can think about later. It doesn't mean we were suppressing emotions, but it means that if there's this exceptionally dark thought, I don't have to dwell on it, because the minute I'm there, all my energy, you know, just runs away. And later you deal with what you deal. That's me, I'm sorry, 1 second. Sorry. זה בגדול, the things that were very useful for us. And of course, there are a million other aspects, but that's what comes up first. Yeah. Yes?
season of the cycle of the Torah reading where the message that gets reinforced, parsha after parsha, is that the good guys benefit from divine protection. Bakol mikol kol, the avot one after the other. And it's easy to fall into a mindset, as much as Rebbeim tell us otherwise, that we are subscribing to this anachronistic and ritually demanding lifestyle in order to be rewarded with divine protection. How did you reconcile that with the cognitive dissonance when the boys were not graced with divine protection? How will we all, in just a few minutes, say together, Tzadik Hashem b'chol derachav v'chasid b'chol matam?
You know, I have a son that's 6 years old. He just started Kita Aleph, and he told me he just started Parashat Bereshit, and he said, "So who killed Hevel?" I said, "Cain," and he said, "And did Hevel do anything to deserve that?" And I thought, he's just been in school for 2 minutes, he's been reading the first psukim of the Torah, and he's already in Yesh Nispat Velo Mishpat. So, I'll soon talk on my personal level, but I don't have the huge answers. And you don't have to go through, and you know, I don't know how much divine protection Yaakov means when he says, Mat v'ra'im hayu yomai. Not everything was perfect with their life. So I start with that, and the truth is, in general, I'm very careful with big answers. I think our ability to, we have the obligation to try, but our ability to really know is extremely limited. Where it meets my life, or I'll say the question of faith in general. I'll start with your side. What you brought up is on the personal level. I don't feel Kadosh Baruch Hu owes me anything. And even though I feel that, I think and even though we're dealing with some very difficult stuff, I feel we are to this day showered with grace, with goodness, with Shefa Tov. So there's also the very difficult side, but that's our life. When you talk about Naphtali, I don't know what was right for him. I don't know, you know, in the eyes of eternity, if there's a difference between 60 years and 16 years. I can't make his cheshbon. Really beyond me. I can talk about the pain of being left without him, without Gilad, without Ayal. The general question of faith is something that comes up. I recognize that people have crises of faith when something difficult happens, when they're let down, when they're disappointed. They often feel abandoned. And to me, and again, I'm not being judgmental, I'm just saying my point of view here is, to me it seems irrational, because before there were bad things happening to other people and I was a believer, and this time something bad touched our family. So what changed? But that's the general question of faith. It's not the specific question you asked of you know, once you accept the Kadosh Baruch Hu, how could terrible things happen? I refrain from well, whatever the word escaped me, but I don't presume to understand how HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. I personally believe that HaKadosh Baruch Hu runs the world. but I never draw lines. People would stop me in the street, and I'd cross the street, and the car would stop, and they'd roll down the window and say, "גברת, הילדים שלכם צדיקים, בזכותם גילו את המנהרות." Lady, your children were righteous. That's because of the three of them, we discovered on time the terror tunnels. There were dozens and dozens of terror tunnels, and that was the reason for Operation Protective Edge, to destroy the tunnels that were. And I could feel good with that, but the truth is, first of all, he wasn't a tzaddik. He was a 16-year-old kid. He fought with his sisters. He was, who knows? As far as my eyes were, he was a very special kid to his mother. And beyond that, I would never presume to say that I know what happened because of what. Even not the good things. I wouldn't say that a disaster came because someone's walking not stick or doing something wrong. And I wouldn't say that the tunnels were found because of the boys. I don't know the cheshbon of how these things work. I feel the need to say that I know people whose faith is the cornerstone of their life. The world could go upside down, but that's the one thing in their life that never changes. And there are other people, and I'm one of them, where it's a very dynamic thing. Sometimes you feel very close. Sometimes you feel more distant. Sometimes you feel estranged. Sometimes you have doubts. And that's fine. It's a relationship. And I could definitely say that I experience it that way. It's my choice to stick with the faith, but it doesn't mean that I don't experience every kind of step on the way. And I have the way I put it today, and this is a bit of a logical lapse here, but whatever. I feel like Kadosh Baruch Hu is great enough. He can contain my occasional doubt, even in his existence or in his interference or in I know for a person, especially a young person, moments like that could be experiences almost shattering. But I feel if you look a bit beyond that, Hashem is still waiting for you. So that's to a large extent that's the way I experience this. And again, in many ways, we're a very pampered generation, or a couple of generations if we count the years between us. And we feel like with enough technology and enough medicine, we'll all live happily ever after. But my family's from Brooklyn, and Brooklyn, they say it ain't so. It's just, nobody promised us a rose garden, and nobody promised us that life would be easy, or that everything would go well, and we wouldn't have bad stuff to deal with. It's like in the tefillah we say, Oseh shalom uvoreh et hakol. Right? That Hashem makes peace and creates everything. The truth is just politically correct for the original verse in Isaiah that actually says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu Oseh shalom uvoreh ra. HaKadosh Baruch Hu makes peace but also creates the evil. Why he creates the evil, when it gives him permission to do bad things, that's beyond me. Yeah.
Two questions. One, with all that's gone on, you have the excuse to be totally someone who just doesn't want to open up about anything and totally just want to shut down in a way. More than that, you seem someone who's much like the simcha, and more than that, you actually start to talk about it. So one is, why do you, what do you get out of talking about it to people like us? And two is, looking at the bigger picture of Sukkot, like you see that in a way, this saved Klal Yisrael to a certain degree, like it saved like a great amount of people's lives. And as much as it's like a bittersweet thing that like, oh, my son has died, but everyone else is here still, Eretz Yisrael is still here. How do you feel about that conflicting?
I'll start with the end. What you're suggesting is like the lady that drove by me suggested. And, I not me and not Naftali and Gilad could take any credit for anything specific. We don't know how these things work. I don't know what the intelligence actually knew beforehand. And the way it worked was that there was so much pressure on the Hebron population that the Gaza population, in solidarity, started making provocations to pull some of the forces towards there and to express solidarity and help out the Hebron population, the Hamas Hebron population. And while they were doing provoking stuff, small provocations, one of the tunnels was discovered. And that was like, and the truth is, it made no sense on Hamas's side, because they had over 30 tunnels prepared, including motorcycles inside for a fast release of terrorists, and IDF uniforms to wear to mingle and create more. It was on the verge of a mega terror attack. Why they chose what they chose, how things. I don't go into that cheshbon, and I definitely don't credit our story to that directly. But the whole summer has one narrative. It started at one point, there were 18 days of search, and then there were over 50 days of fighting in Operation Protective Edge. It's one long story. How exactly? Beyond me. The first question, there's the question of, actually once somebody asked me if it's therapeutic for me, and I said, okay, great, I'll just write the bill, I'll pay you afterwards. But I don't find it therapeutic, but what actually happened was that during that time, again, you can imagine how terrible it was, but there was also some height, I don't know which words to use, a sense of glory to the fact that people brought out the best in them, that people were able to connect, that people were able to care. The cliche that's called achdut, unity, for a couple of months wasn't a cliche. It got a wash over, and all the mud was washed, and people were feeling like family. They were feeling unified. And by the end of that summer, I was asking myself, first I was asking myself if it was an illusion, or if it was true, and if it was true, will it last? And at the time, I remember I would cling on to things that people would offer me a pasuk, a verse, or a metaphor, and it was very useful for me. And there were two metaphors I used for that. One was a person walking in the rain, and it's dark, and they're stumbling, and they can't see where they're going, and then suddenly, for a second there's lightning. And during that moment of a second of lightning, they realize the real reality of their surroundings. They can actually look around and see what they're part of. And then it's dark again, and they're stumbling again, and everyday life comes back. But for a few seconds there, we realized, we saw. Actually, it wasn't seconds, it was weeks and weeks in that summer. Not only the search, during Tzuk Eitan, it continued. And for weeks there was a true feeling of what we're part of. So that was one thing. The other was, will it last? Actually, a rabbi from New York that made Aliyah in the meantime, he said, when people experience true love, it's a life-transforming experience. And sometimes that couple doesn't last, but it still changed something in them. They experienced something. And even though within months after that, here in Israel, we were part of a terrible election, and people were at each other's throats, just like we know when we're really at our best. And you were asking, where did all the unity go? So you say, there's something there that we experienced together. And but also Avi, my husband, and Bat Galim and Ophir, Gilad's parents, and Iris and Ori, Eyal's parents, feel a true responsibility to keep some of that spirit alive. Some of that statement of, look, it's not just a cliche. We're really part of something great and amazing, and it's almost a miracle for so many people to care from so far away and to feel connection. And two stories. So the answer to you is it's part of the responsibility to keep this alive. I don't need, I'll say it bluntly, I don't need you guys or anybody in the world except family and friends that actually knew Naftali I don't need you to remember my son. But I'd love you to remember who we were during that time, who we managed to be, how we managed to, that, if that could stay alive, we can build on that to keep that going in some sense. It never stays up there. After Mamad Har Sinai, minutes later, they were already busy doing the bad stuff. But when there's a height, it could be, and this is a word I hate, but it could be an inspiration. Just because we were there, we actually experienced it, okay? So that's the reason I talk. I'll tell you two stories, two small, tiny stories. One is of, we live on something that's called the Israel Trail. It starts all the way up north and goes all the way south of Eilat to Taba. And there are families along the trail that host hikers, and they're called trail angels. And we've been doing it for years because it's a lot of fun. You get to meet a lot of interesting people. So this guy texts me during the day, can I come sleep by you tonight? And I say, sure. And he comes in a couple of hours later, and he's been walking miles and miles during that day. And he goes down, he takes a shower, and then he comes to eat supper with us. And as we talk, we start asking him who he is, etc. It turns out he's a lone soldier. He came from Cleveland. Actually, I guess some of you might know him, might have heard this story already. And he had just finished his army service, and he just before he goes to his other home overseas, he was doing the Israel Trail. And we start asking him, he has no idea who he's by. And we start asking him, so where were you in Operation Protective Edge? And he says, I was in Gaza fighting. And where were you in Shuvu Achim, the operation to find the boys? And he says, I was in Hebron searching. And then, I don't know, maybe he saw something or he heard something, suddenly it clicked. And he realized where he's at. And he became very, very emotional. And he said, I just want to tell you, I was searching for your son like I was searching for my very own brother. And I told him, sure you did, because he is. And again, this could sound like such a cliche, and there's so many times of life where it doesn't feel like that, but deep down, I feel it's the truth. I feel it because I experienced it firsthand. I met a young lady in Toronto. She was saying, I was praying and I was involved and I was down, whatever. And then my husband called me to say that the boys were found. And I suddenly felt very sick, and I ran outside and I was looking for something. And later I analyzed what I was doing, and I realized that in a time like this, you want to be with family. And there was no one at home. So I ran outside, and any pair of Jewish eyes I would have accidentally bumped into would have been family to me. And that was a formative moment for me, she said. Just realizing that. And the truth is, some of the things that grew out of this is, we've been in communities that, to celebrate Unity Day, which is the project we're involved with for commemoration, Reconstructionist and Reform and Conservative and two Orthodox shuls all came together to have a Shabbat meal or to sit together, and people are amazed by themselves because when these things happen, they say, these are people we see every day in the street, and we never say hello because we don't belong to the same shul, we don't agree on so many things, we don't dress the same way, we actually have different dreams for the Jewish people. But when you take time off just to recognize that this is family, it's, I think it was a rabbi from Boca that taught me this thing. He said, you don't have to like everybody, okay? Even in your very own family, you don't have to like everybody. But love is a totally different story. Love is about commitment, it's about responsibility, it's about having each other's back. And I can disagree from A to Z with someone and still realize he's right. So that's why I stay. Yes?
What helps you make light of the situation and keep a positive attitude?
Make light goes, sounds like make light as in insignificant, and it could be also in Hanukkah, light. I obviously don't make light of the situation, but ככה. Over these, 2.5 years, I've met a lot of people that deal with loss, that dealt with loss. It's like whenever you experience something, suddenly you see everybody around you that has dealt with that. And there are many different styles, and I'm not judgmental to any of them. And, I've met some extremes. I've met a family where the statement was, at least at the time when I met them, it was, nobody's going to cry in our family. Because, and this is my imagination, I think they're looking at their, they think their officer is looking down at them, and they have to be very proper. They don't mean that they can't cry privately, but crying is not the thing we do. Okay, it's fine, it's their choice. I met a family where actually for over 5 years, the mother there said, nobody's going to laugh in this house again. And then you pray for them, that they keep a window open for joy to come back in. And then there are always people that come over to you and they say, we went back to work, we put a smile on our faces for our children, for our grandchildren, but you and I know it's just a mask. And in the beginning it made me feel, uncomfortable, but then I learned to give credit to that mask. It gives them the strength to do the things they want to do, to do the things that they feel they ought to do. And really, my personal choice, and it's only a personal choice, it's not better than anybody else's choice. I don't want to walk around the world with a mask on my face. It doesn't stick well. It doesn't feel like part of me. My choice is to cry when I cry, and to laugh when we laugh, and to try to maintain the full spectrum of human experience. If it's, I have a mantra. I'll share with you. This is the thing I tell to myself when things are more difficult. I can feel sadness. I don't have to become my sadness. I can feel pain. I don't have to become my pain. And in my inner world and inner landscape, there's so many other blessings and talents and experiences. And the truth is, there's so much blessing in our life. I can choose to take a bucket of black paint and spill it all over my life. First of all, it would be stupid, but also it would be great ingratitude to all the blessings that we do have in our life. So for me, when you ask what, it's about keeping all the options open and leaving room for, I have a girl that she's now 8, but I think she must have been 6.5 when she said this. She said, "Ema, do you still put on your makeup only when you get to work so you can cry on the way?" And I was, for a second there, I was like, how could you say that? And then I said, I wouldn't want her to think it's business as usual, right? I said, Nama, it's not like every day the whole way I cry, but I reserve the right to cry. So the idea is just to keep it, to make all the options available, and to feel that it's fine to let a lot of joy into our life, a lot of blessings into our life, not to paint everything in one color. That's my personal choice. I think, do we have a few more minutes? Question? Okay, okay, there. I guess we do. Yeah.
How do you let the light into all the darkness?
I think there's plenty of light. The idea is not to let the black stuff shadow it. You understand? There's plenty of blessing. And when you have, you give time for, you're not suppressing anything, you're dealing with everything, you're dealing with loss and pain, but you don't let that be the only color in your life. There's so much more. There's so much, that again, I'm not preaching, it's just my world, okay? Yeah?
First of all, I just want to thank you for taking the time to speak to us. It means a tremendous amount. My question is, a few questions ago we spoke about Emunah. We asked about faith. People tend to lose at least to what I know, Emunah most in the time of crisis. You know, when things are good, it's easy to say things, you know, I have Emunah, I have faith, I believe in God. But in times of darkness, during the hardest struggles, it's sort of when we lose it. My question is I can only imagine how difficult it was hearing the intelligence reports, the army searching. I was in Israel during the time. I remember I myself was just like checking my phone every 2 seconds to hear reports. I had no connection to you nor to your family. I didn't know your son. But I felt a certain I was so scared and worried. I remember my mom calling me from America just being like, come back home, I can't deal with it. And I myself was thinking to myself, like, you know, Hashem runs the world and obviously there's a bigger plan, but like, why? And in the moment, you know, now how strong you are is beyond an inspiration to me, to everyone. In the moment, how did you continue when you didn't know where your son was? Could be alive, could be dead, he could be being tortured, could not be tortured. You just don't know. There's so many, as you said, there's so much black paint you could spill over. How did you continue your Emunah, your faith in God, even the struggle that you must have felt and your family felt, like, you can't even begin to comprehend. How did you keep it going during that time?
So you know the other side of what I was saying, it seems irrational to me just because, you know, I saw the stuff going on in other people's lives, right? And still I was believing, so why would it change? But the other side of it was that this experience for us, for me, I'll speak only for myself, was an experience of being fragile, of being vulnerable, of dealing with the real materials of life, unfortunately materials of life and death. And so much of our time we spend being so covered and pampered that when you get exposed, it's very difficult, but it's very real. When you're in a place where, at least for me, looking back, being so vulnerable, being so fragile, being so exposed, was dealing with the real stuff. Was letting some of the being pampered, letting go of it, and that has its own powers. That has its own benefits, and that for me was it was mostly a lesson in humility. You know, where am I, and where, you know, it gave me proportions. So you do. Again, you deal with those things they come, but you also, some of the things could be embraced because there's a lot to grow out of there. I feel like we're in the last minutes of, you know, we're starting to do so a couple of things I wanted to say, okay? One, on the personal level and the general level. During that time, each of the family had an IDF team living in their home. Actually, in our backyard, there was a post there that was it like slowly got built, and they were sleeping by the neighbors. And there's a lot to say about them, but I'll keep this one short. For us, they were, since it was a real trust built, they were our source of accurate information and of good advice if we needed it. And at some point, there was a gag order on the tape of Gilad's phone call. And they, at some point, they were afraid that it leaked, and they wanted us, you know, if we want to hear it, we should hear it under controlled circumstances, and they gave us the choice to hear the tape. Now, each of us chose if they want to hear it or not. For instance, Iris to this day didn't listen to it. She said, it's not helpful, I don't need it. And at that point, I wanted any piece of information that I could get, so I chose to listen to the tape. And I went over to one of the IDF negotiation team members, who's a psychologist by profession, and I asked him to prepare me to hear the tape. Now, he didn't know exactly what we'll hear, and I didn't know what we'll hear, and I was afraid I might recognize my son's voice, I might, you know, who knows what I'm going to hear. And he said, I said, could you please prepare me? And he said, well, Racheli, what are you afraid of? And I said, I don't know. I know I was very focused up to now. This was like 10 days into the search. And this is going to come from a whole different place, you know, hearing, and I'm afraid I'll fall apart. And he said, okay, so you'll fall apart. then what? And I thought for a second, and I said, well, I guess then I'll collect myself and pick myself up. And he said, that's true. And those were such simple words, but for me they were profound. It was like saying, you can do this. And today I put this story together with another story that happened 3 months later. Erev Rosh Hashanah, we got a phone call from a wonderful woman called Chagit Rein. She's the mother of Naya Rein that was a soldier killed in Lebanon a few years ago. And she said, look, I'm just calling you to tell you that the anxiety that you're feeling, the fear that you're experiencing from being in the holidays without him, Rosh Hashanah without him, Sukkot without him, the fear that you're experiencing, it's worse than the holiday itself. And I heard her, and I understood, and it calmed something in me. And the truth, it was right. The holidays weren't easy at all, but it wasn't like what I was fearing. And today I put these things together and I say, you know, we all have the things that we fear, our anxieties. And, you know, God willing, it will never be some surreal, dramatic story like this one. But if this could go on, we'll have something. It's on? Okay, so... in a second. Not yet. So, you know, we all have our things that we fear. And the truth is, most of the time, the fear is worse than the thing itself. Most of the time. But even if, God forbid, the worst things happen, and even if we do fall apart, we have it within us to collect ourselves and get up. And, yeah, it's going on. And sometimes it takes hours, sometimes it takes days, sometimes it takes months or more. But today I feel it's totally a divine gift of healing, and that it means the world.